Hi everyone, Matt Bernier, Dan Illman, taking a look back at the Grade 1 Rodeo Drive from Santa Anita this past Saturday. Figured to be major prep for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, going 1.25 miles, starting down the hill as we break from the gate. It was going to be an interesting spot because you knew you had a horse like Goodyear for Roses, who was going to be a favorite in this spot. You had a couple other interesting runners, most notably Avenge, to find out if she was going to be able to get back on the beam, get back going the right direction, and she does just that.
Avenge won this race last year, and she finds a really nice spot in a race that for the most part was dominated up front. That's Goldie Esponi, second time for Bob Baffert, clearing off to the lead, and Avenge is just sitting pretty right now in second. It could be argued that Goldie Esponi found this 1.25 miles actually a little short for her. She was very game to finish second. Avenge, though, is in a great spot.
A much improved effort this time around for Goldie Esponi as opposed to that most recent run down at Del Mar. You see Avenge, she's in a beautiful tracking trip. Down on the inside, that's a horse to keep an eye on in those Team Valor Silks. That's Responsible for Love. She's going to have a little bit of an issue as we go into the far turn. Meanwhile, just outside of her is Goodyear for Roses, your even money favorite. She's going to get into the running, I think, a little bit earlier than ideal for a horse like this, who it still seems like her best runs come from well off the pace.
I'm not sure if she's pulling Corey Nakatani or Corey is thinking, I got to get closer. I think it's the former. I think she is just eager. She is in the clear and she wants to go. And this is an early move, and this is sort of playing into the style of the two pace setters, Goldie Esponi and Avenge, and not really to Goodyear for Roses. And I think she pays the price for it late. Nonetheless, it was a disappointing performance.
Because she fades out of it quite quickly at this time right now. This is the big point. You're going to see Goldie Esponi start to get a little bit sort of, I don't know, spinning her wheels. Meanwhile, Responsible for Love is being shuffled all the way toward probably mid-pack, 5-6 lengths off of Avenge is in full flight, and she looks like the Avenge of old. But really, the big story now is going to be you've got some horses trying to come from the back of the pack. Nothing's happening.
Watch Responsible for Love in those Team Valor Silks, green silks, red cap, in behind Goldie Esponi, who was just, grinding it out. She's one pace. She doesn't have the acceleration. There's nowhere really for her to go. Now she's going to come down towards the inside, and who's in her way? Avenge. She eventually tries to split horses. It's too little too late. It was a perfect example of the trip was good until it wasn't.
It was a perfect trip until it was not. Avenge, though, it's nice to see her get back to the winner's circle. She wins the Grade 1 Rodeo Drive, $6 on the win end. Goldie Esponi sticks around, pays $9.60 a place. Responsible for Love, obviously, with some trouble. $6 to show. The $1 exact comes back $42.30. The 50-cent try, $117.25. Avenge, 95 Beyer speed figure here in the Rodeo Drive for Richard Mandela, Flavian Pratt. This is a horse, again, we know when she's right, what she's capable of. The 121 Timeform U.S. rating, it at least represents a return to some of her better efforts.
Oh, and it was a needed return to some of her better efforts. We recall she ran so well in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf last year behind two world-class horses in Queen's Trust and Lady Eli. Her two starts this year, well, she took on Lady Eli off the layoff first time back, and you could view it as, well, that's a tough spot to be in, and she ran okay. You could also view it that, boy, she was getting tired at the end of that race. And when we saw her at Del Mar, she supposedly threw a fit in the gate, really sort of injured herself there, and that might have taken some of the starch out of her prior to a disappointing effort. This is the real Avenge, and I think it's a good Avenge. Whether it's good enough cutting back to 1 1/8 miles this year for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf and beating a horse like Lady Eli, I'm not so sure.
You had brought up something earlier in the day. The fact that Goldie Esponi stuck around to run second, is that an indictment on everyone else?
I think it is. I mean, turning for home, it looked like she would finish fifth.
Yeah.
Avenge ran right by her. Thinking about it some more, I think that Goldie Esponi is built for 11, 12, 13 furlongs. And when Avenge made that burst of speed and went right by Goldie Esponi just, she grinds. It takes her a long time to build up to that momentum of top speed, and all she did was just hold Responsible for Love back. She was very game to finish second. I don't think you want to cut her back at all for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, but down the road there are long distance races. You got to keep her sound.
Responsible for Love is a horse that she's done her best running going longer than even 1.25 miles. The problem now is, one, is she good enough to even try a race like the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf? And two, that's at 9 furlongs. Does she have any chance at a distance that short?
The question is, do you run her in the Breeders' Cup? I think they will. Or do you decide to wait for a race like the Matriarch, I believe it is?
That's at a mile.
So
you've got the red carpet handicap, which is a mile and 3/8.
Red carpet handicap's a mile and 3/8. Obviously, that race lacks the prestige of the Breeders' Cup. I think they run her in the Breeders' Cup, figuring that she can come with a late run. She was a horse that was a very interesting case, because early in her career, she was just a one-way speed, like a Goldie Esponi type. And in her prior race to this, boy, she came from off the pace. Now we know she has gear. She has this sort of tactical speed as well. I don't think she's good enough to win a race like the Filly and Mare Turf, but she probably deserves a chance in the form she's in.
Ambicelli, we kind of know Ambicelli at this point. She comes with 1 run from the back of the pack. I don't think she's good enough, and I love her. I don't think she's good enough to win a big race. Decked Out, I thought this was a little bit of a disappointing effort. I liked her in here. I thought she would have maybe a bit of a better trip with the idea of taking her back and making that 1 run. She was still a little bit more forwardly placed. I don't know. I mean, what do you think of this effort out of her? Do you think you go on with her? Do you try something else? I mean, you can't go to the Breeders' Cup with her, can you?
You could make the argument that the pace held together and closers like Ambicelli and Decked Out and Frenzified and horses at the back of the pack just didn't have a chance. You could also make the argument that Decked Out's got to finish ahead of Ambicelli no matter what happens in this situation. Decked Out missed a lot of time.
Yeah.
And she came back and she had a little trouble in her prior race. She was closer to the pace. I think she needs to be taken all the way out of it and make 1 run. It is not a style that I usually am saying, please do this, but I think it just works for Decked Out, hoping for some pace. Do you go to the Breeders' Cup after this race? It wouldn't surprise me if they do, figuring 3rd start of the form cycle. Maybe Keith DeZormo is just trying to get her back into shape. The question I have for you is, do you go to the Breeders' Cup with good year for Roses? I couldn't off of this line.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, this was the disaster of the race. The even money favorite. She is up the track. She finishes 8th in a field of 9. It's very difficult. We always talk about it. To take a horse off of such a bad effort and back them. Forget about if you're owning or training. From a wagering standpoint, you can't do that. If you own the horse, first things first, you got to find out if she's sound. Did something go wrong here? Because this was an uncharacteristically horrific effort from her. Normally, even when she doesn't win, she's at least going to have a little bit of fight. She packed it in with about a half mile to go. I don't know. I wonder if you take the blinkers back off, because they added those 2 starts back when she ran 2nd there in the John C. Maybe. But even having said that, boy, like you had said, this was such a bad race. How do you go on with any sort of confidence?
I mean, she did move into the teeth of the pace. It's sort of like she pulled herself up there, and that's where maybe your point with the blinkers is well taken. Maybe the blinkers just had her really over-eager and lit up, and she pulled herself in there. But that being said, you know, she can't be out-finished by horses like Frenzified and Majestic Heat. She had shown too much in her prior starts.
Avenge gets the job done. Back to her winning ways, winning the Grade 1 Rodeo Drive. She earns a 95 Beyer speed figure and is on to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf.